in Dear Evan Hansen, Will began his career in the theater with roles in Billy Witch, Wonderful Town, and The Black Suits, to name a few. He stars in the film One Penny. On TV, he's appeared in Red Oaks and The Mysteries of Laura. He won the Broadway.com Audience Choice Award for Funniest Performance.
Favorite funny performance. I think it's important that we say favorite and not best or funniest.
I agree.
Because it feels like it was a popularity contest and I won.
And you won. And let's underline and highlight that fact.
Favorite.
And it, by the way, let's be honest, it's nice to be nominated, but it's better to win.
They're both good.
Do you agree, though?
Yes.
Winning is better. He hosts a hilarious blog about his life on stage and off called Sincerely Me, which allows viewers backstage access to life with the Dear Evan Hansen cast. He has a cabaret show called Loser Songs, an evening with Will Roland. He's an accomplished musician. He is a graduate of NYU, or New York University, where he majored in musical theater. He's talented. He's hilarious.
So nice. This is great.
I'm going to get that clean. He's talented and hilarious. Welcome, Will Roland, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. That was like the nicest anything anyone's ever read about me.
Is that true? Well, you can take it home.
I'm gonna frame it. This is I've never been described as an award-winning Broadway actor before.
You are.
And
you are.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is a big deal.
Wow.
In fact, from now on, every bio, that's how it begins.
That's it.
You
I
should
gotta update
demand
my
that.
own bio.
You should demand that.
I worry. People know that I write my own bio. Everybody who's ever submitted a bio knows that you get an email from a company manager that's like, please send us your bio, 75 words or less. And so if it begins with Will Roland is an award-winning Broadway actor,
well, this is how
everyone will know.
This is what my guests do to do the old bait and switch. They're like, let me have my people send it. And then a moment later, from willroland@gmail.com.
I didn't write that.
I don't know. That's so weird that my people have the same email address as me. I can't explain it. That's how much they love me. I'm their only client. Well, I just have to say that everything I said is true. Let's start with that. And I feel you're one of these people, and this may be true for anyone who meets you. There's something about you that makes everyone feel like they've known you for a very long time, even if they haven't. Is that something other people have said?
You know, it rings a bell a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that I would love. It's the kind of thing that I would love people to say about me. So maybe I subconsciously try to make that happen because it's like the kind of thing that I want. I want to be like, he's so easy to talk to. He's such a regular guy.
He's so warm.
He's so warm. He's so friendly.
Well, you've kind of had an extraordinary career for the very short amount of time you've actually been a grown-up and could have a career. But I wonder, before we get into Dear Evan Hansen, which is a remarkable thing that's happened both to you and the universe in the last couple of years, where did you grow up, and what was the relationship to performing in the arts in your home?
When I was little, we lived right here in Manhattan. We lived in the Village,
known as the greatest city in the world.
Great. Thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda.
You're welcome.
And it's true. I lived there until I was 8.
Do you have a memory of that?
I do. Yeah, I remember it very distinctly. I went to New York City public school. Went to PS 41 right on 11th Street and 6th Avenue.
I know it so well.
Yeah, and we lived at 808 Broadway, which is 11th and Broadway. And I remember distinctly my commute straight. It was like a straight shot down 11th Street, and I had such distinct memories of that when I eventually when I moved to NYU, I moved into my dorm, I was very disoriented because on all maps, up is north, and out my front door, up was the way to school. So I just much of my life, Little Will,
not
Roland.
College Will, yeah.
No, College Will was a little bit like, wait a second, I think I'm going north right now. It took me a full couple weeks to sort of be like, oh no, that street that I remember so viscerally actually ran east-west.
That's right.
I had to rewire my brain.
Well, known fact about New York City, generally the odd-numbered streets head east-west, and the non-odd-numbered streets, the even numbers, like 20th Street, goes west-east. So that's a good little thing to know for people who don't live here, or it sounds like you had to get a compass.
And the even
sorts.
numbers are always on the south side of the street, for the most part.
The even number addresses.
The even number addresses,
that's
exactly.
Right.
Like 200
Where
is
we
on
are
the south
today.
side of the street.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, this was great.
amazing.
It's been really nice. Thanks.
I I mean, I'm done. I got nothing.
That's everything.
That is everything. So the point being, you started out in the city. Now, the
Yes.
East Village is sort of known, it has had many lives, right?
Mhm.
Every decade, the East Village kind of becomes something else.
Yes, right now it's very chic. It's very wealthy people pretending they have no money and like being bohemian. But when I lived there, it was very much in transformation. I was born in 1989, and we lived there until 1998. So in that time, New York was very much in an economic boom, and Rudy Giuliani was mayor, and
Yeah.
we were broken windows policing, and the East Village, like when I was born, was actually like kind of a dodgy place. But by the time we moved away, was like very nice, and we like my father like sold our apartment, and we made like a lot of money from when we bought it. But then we found out that like 3 years later, someone had made like 10 times the amount of money
Womp
that we
womp.
sold it
Yeah.
for.
Guess we didn't do
It's
so great.
become like the most expensive real estate in the world. But when I was there, it was like very sort of unassuming. And my father, my mother has always been just full time mom.
Okay.
And my dad is an antique dealer and auctioneer and appraiser. And so like very much in my life,
Auctioneer, like, do I hear 4,000? Do I
yeah,
hear
all
4,000?
of it, all of the above. And
Oh.
he does
Are
like
you good at that? Can you do
I'm
that?
pretty good at it. I did
Okay.
it for BCFA at Dear Evan Hansen.
You
I did
did?
on when we did our like collecting in April or whatever it was. Every night we would take the cast that had been sawed off of Ben Platt's arm and we would sign
Sometimes his arm.
it. And sometimes his arm,
To
sometimes the
highest
whole
bidders.
arm too. So they can make a
So I
clone
get
Ben at
million.
home.
That's right.
$1 million for the arm of Tony Award winner Ben Platt.
That would have been great.
Yeah. But
And
I
you know
didn't.
what? He's so nice, he would have.
He would have. He would give it literally an arm and a leg for BCFA.
That's right.
But yeah, no, we made a lot of money. It was like really great. We raised like $100,000 just selling like sweaty arm casts.
That's the
But
best
I
feeling
was
on
the
the planet.
auctioneer.
So give us a little, like,
Oh, all right. Okay, so let's. I'm gonna auction this bottle of Smart Water. All right, so
Smart Water, if you're listening.
sponsor us.
Always, always happy to have you.
I would love to have you here.
Makes you smarter.
How do we say glacier? Glaceau?
Yes.
Glaçon.
Ouais.
So lot 1 is a Glaçon Smart Water. It measures about 8 inches high. This one's about 3/4 full. Let's start the bidding at $200. Do I have 200 anywhere? I've got 200 bid with the lady across the table. I've got 200 bid. Oh, and the gentleman on the other side of the booth is 300. I've got 300 outside the booth. Do I hear 4? I've got 300 on the booth. Oh, I've got 4. 40 with the lady in the headphones. 40 with the lady in the headphones. I've got 4, and I've got 500 outside. 500 looking for 5, looking for 6. I've got 500 looking for 6. 6 with the lady in the headphones. 600 going once, going twice. Sold. The Glaçon Smart Water for $600 plus
Oh.
buyer's premium.
My goodness. By the way, I mean, so far
just
so
counting.
good on the Broadway career front, but not for nothing.
Got to back up.
Got to back up.
Got to back up. It's a terrible industry. It's an industry in decline.
it?
I don't want to. Yeah, no, I don't want to be an auctioneer.
Was there an auction? Is there a home for this business that people can go
There
into?
is. It's
Okay.
Roland auctions.
And did you hang out there as a kid?
Yeah, I have many memories of like warehouses, just filled with like old. The smell of old wood is a very like visceral thing for me. I walk into a room and I'm like an old person's house and it smells like my childhood. I had like a little antique tricycle that I used to like tool around in. We've been in a lot of like locations. We've been on 11th Street in like 8 different addresses, and then we had a warehouse in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we had a warehouse in Sunset Park, and we had a location out in Locust Valley on Long Island, and
So did your dad? It's your dad. Your mom, you said, was at home with
Yeah.
you. Did he teach you stuff about the
You know,
value
like
of
a
stuff
little bit,
and what
yeah.
things are?
I mean,
and-
you can smell silver, and I know a little bit about like art valuation, and it's sort of the like gross, like the very commerce side of fine art. I know a lot about in terms of like how to price a painting and how to appraise, jewelry and silver, and how to weigh things and how to, just stuff like that.
Was there a moment in your? Do you have siblings, by the way?
I do. I have a little sister.
So
Her name is Valerie.
Where's Valerie?
Valerie is she was working for Roland Auctions for a while.
Okay.
And in the last year she started working for Christie's, which is a much more upscale place to work.
So not a competitor as much as a.
No, because it's such a large ecosystem. It's the kind of thing where like Christie's will sell in a day what we sell annually. So it's not like, they're
I get
like,
why she moved
we
to
don't want
Christie's."
this. Exactly.
That sounds better.
Yeah, no, she's got like a crazy job actually, because she's front desk, like she's reception or client calling it relations, whatever it is, but she like sometimes it's like, this is so and so, and he's coming into the gallery today. This is a picture of him, and he's gonna not ask for the specialist when he gets here, but you need to call her immediately when he
Because
shows up,
it's
so that they
this
can run
person.
into each other in the gallery, and she can walk him through a specific way, so that when he sees his painting, he's not upset with where it's been hung. This
Okay.
is true.
Right. Like that's a whole other
Yeah,
world.
because they have a Da Vinci that they're selling right now. It's like $100 million painting, and
Where
like
is that?
it's actually in London at the moment,
Okay.
but it'll be back very soon, and
right.
we can see it before.
That's
It's the
the
last.
best.
There are only 20 surviving Da Vinci oil paintings. All of them are in museums. This was the very last one to come out of a private collection, and they got it, and they're very happy about it.
That is unbelievable. Should we
Yeah.
share with everyone that I was the owner of that
Yeah,
piece?
is
Or is
it
that
you?
weird?
Well,
Yeah.
you sold it to. Right now, it's owned by a Russian oligarch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
Which is my favorite new word.
if you want to buy something
Oligarch.
beautiful
Yeah.
but pay for something evil,
That
this is the
is-
painting for you.
Moving on. So that's fantastic. And I could talk about that, and we will
So could I, but it's terrible. I
for
know.
a million hours. So was there ever a moment where you thought that's what you were going to do?
No, never that, never that. My family. I feel like some people have these stories of like adversity. I do not within my home like have that story. Like my parents are incredibly supportive and incredibly like they're. I could like go onto the stage. I could like take a dump, and they would like just never stop clapping. They're really. I mean, but I think everyone needs someone like that.
Well, let's talk about that because this is a business that many people go into for all sorts of reasons.
Mhm.
Some do it because they felt like they never got enough or never got approval and they're kind of seeking it
Yeah.
constantly. Some people got so much love and approval that they need it at a sort of constant.
I'm a little bit in that vein. Yeah.
So we're just keeping it going.
Exactly. I've
What
got a
happened in-
reservoir to fill
We gotta
with
keep the
compliments.
tank. All right.
You
but they
helped
were.
today hugely with that intro.
Well, mom and pa Roland called me and they were like, "Listen, our boy is an award-winning Broadway actor." So let's talk
Keep saying
about
it,
this.
Ilana. Let's
I
work
will,
at
my
it a
love.
few
It's so
times.
done. So you move,
I did. Yeah, we moved to Long Island when I'm 8.
and when do you realize I sing better than almost everyone else, and I'm really funny?
I don't realize that for a long time. The funny thing really sort of rears its head in middle school. I transfer from the Locust Valley Public School to Friends Academy, which is a
Ooh.
very nice
Very
college
posh.
preparatory school.
Yes.
On the North Shore of Long Island, the Gold Coast. It's Gatsby
Okay.
country. I went there basically for free because we were really broke. Which is I always feel the need to like.
understand.
I didn't
Even
pay
if it's not true.
$30,000 a
Even
year
if
for
it's
high
not
school.
true.
No, it's totally true. It's like
Okay.
so true. But like
Okay.
people pay $30,000 a year to go there.
And now much more.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like it's incredible. But so I went to this school, and they had first of all they had like a spectacular theater program there. But like
Were you super smart, and that's why they took you and were happy to have
I was,
you?
yeah, no, I was like, I did like really well on like tests and stuff. It was actually an amazing story, because I applied. Basically, my dad, he works with this sort of socialite in our town, who's this wonderful woman. Her name is Barry Osborne, and my dad was doing a charity auction for the church in the town where Barry is like, very active.
The person.
Yeah, the St. John's of Laddingtown, and I was like 10, and he like brought me with him to this like charity event. He's like, come see, bring your son to work day. It's on a weekend, and I'm you can see me do an auction, and I think he was actually donating appraisal services. Was
That's
so
very cool.
ladies could come in with their jewelry, and he would weigh it and stuff like that. So I was there, and I was like, very like loquacious, like, active kid. Very sort of like I wasn't like running around, but I would just talk a mile a minute. And Barry found that very enchanting, and she was like, "Bill, you have to send that son of yours to Friends Academy." And he was like, "Oh no, it's too expensive. Oh, you should just try it." So I applied to go in 5th grade. I applied. I got in. They offered us a financial aid package. It was still incredibly expensive, and we were like, "Oh no way." So a year later, Barry's like, "So is William at French Academy now?" And and my dad was like, "Oh, yeah, I've told this story before." And
Well, I'm taking that. You're not going to hear that in the edit.
it's well
You've never
rehearsed.
told this before.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
Is William at French Academy? And my dad says, "Oh no, it was too expensive, and we couldn't do it." She goes,
But thank you, Barry.
Have him apply again, Bill. Have him apply again. So I applied again to start in 6th grade, and I got in, and it was too expensive despite the financial aid, and we said no. And then about a week after we declined, my dad got a phone call, and it was John Gambling, local radio personality and head of the board of trustees at Friends Academy. And he said, "Hello, is this Bill Roland?" And my dad was like, "Yes, it is." "Well, I'm John Gambling, and I'm on the board of trustees here at Friends Academy. I've received a phone call from a prestigious alumna of ours, a Miss Barry Osborne, and she's instructed me to give you whatever you ask for on this phone call." And so we worked out a deal whereby I paid like a pittance
$1.
to go. Basically, I mean,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
relatively.
$1.
I paid $1 a year to
Yeah.
go to Friends Academy.
Yeah.
And it was a very it's inspired a strong belief in sort of like faith and like or fate. Like the sort of
Did
like
you feel
there's an
like-
order in the universe. Things are supposed to happen, and they do.
And did you feel like you fit in?
Yeah, I loved it there. But I was very smart and very clever. And I was like a real douchebag. And I very quickly realized like, oh, like when I say the first thing that comes into my mind about that kid, everyone laughs.
Mhm.
Which made me into like kind of a bully, like kind of a terrible bully. And it's experiences that I draw on in the play because like I think I had a few sort of interventions in my behavior that I luckily like sort of I reformed, I repented and sort of like started being a nice person. But I think like in an alternate universe, like nobody sort of gave me the feedback that I needed to hear, and I just went on like being a douchebag for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I think that yeah, no, so that's my sort of
That's intense.
that tale. It was very
Yes.
intense.
So when you
Yeah.
look back on that time, like, do you feel like you were able to apologize to people at the time? Do you feel like
Many of them, yeah,
are dead?
and they're all dead.
Did I say I insulted them? I actually killed
I
them.
murdered them.
Yes, murdered. Murder.
The murder. It's not called muck duck. But I went to no, a lot of them became my friends actually in high school. I sort of I made very active efforts to repair things that I had done, and it's a time in your life where you forgive and forget. Like you're 13 years old, and like somebody was mean to you last week, they're nice to you this week, and you're just happy they're not being mean to you anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was like that
Totally.
was my experience. But that was when I started doing theater. It started with choir for me in like third grade, and I like really enjoyed choir, but by the time I got to Friends Academy, they had this spectacular theater and this spectacular theater program. And
And
I
did
was
you start
like,
getting cast?
I did. We did the middle school play my sixth grade year, which was a bunch of original works written by the faculty there. And then near the end of the year, they selected 6 middle schoolers to be in the high school production.
That's a big deal, Will.
It was a big deal. And I and it
Ilana,
it was my
it's
first
still-
big break.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was cast in Once on This Island, which you look at me and you're like, really?
They're bringing it back right now.
It was
In no small part
you're
because of
picturing
you.
the Friends Academy production of Once on This Island right now.
Sure.
It was more diverse than you think. It
Really?
wasn't as much of a crime
Okay.
as you think it is.
Okay.
I mean, I was still in it, so as were people who
But
looked
not
like
everyone
me.
was Will Roland.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there
appreciate
it
that,
was not
Will.
as much of a looking back. I'm like, you know what? It's a great show, and we got most of the way there. So
Sure.
it's
Well, and when you go see it, you're gonna be filled with
I'm
emotion.
gonna just be like mouthing along and weeping the whole
Totally.
time. It's one of my favorites. It's beautiful.
So then in high school you continue.
Yes, I was in like I jumped
in
in
the
with both
theater
feet. I
department.
was like, yeah, and I was doing all the shows, and I was like, I was a freshman, and I was like, oh, like what am I doing in the spring? Like you're doing the middle school play, but I'm not in middle school anymore. Like can I assist on that? And they're like, well, usually we don't have freshmen assist on the middle school play. And I was like, please. And they're like, okay, fine. And then like there was the summer camp at Friends Academy called Artist Institute. And they were like, oh, we don't usually have, I didn't want to be like a student anymore. And I was like, oh, can I be, we called them interns instead of counselors. So I was like, can I be, in the intern training program? And they're like, oh, we don't really usually have ninth graders in it. And I was like, no, please. So I was like all that.
You're in.
And then by senior year, it was like, I was taking like 4 like classes, and then like choir and chamber choir and music history and an opera appreciation class that was me and 3 other people and took place at a lunchtime. Like
And are you coming into the city to see Broadway shows? Is
yeah,
that
I'm
part
coming
of
in on
your
the
family's-
weekends
Yeah.
and school trips, and we did like my senior year we did this amazing trip to London or to England, I should say, because we went for We spent 7 nights there, and we saw 7 shows. And our first weekend there, we like landed at Heathrow and we drove straight to Stratford. We went to the Royal Shakespeare Company,
So
and
cool.
we saw this is when they were doing all of the histories in rep. So we saw like we got there like Friday evening and we had dinner and we saw Henry VI Part 1. And then we got up, we had breakfast, we saw Henry VI Part 2, we had lunch, we saw Henry VI Part 3, and then we had dinner and we saw Richard III. All with the same cast, all with the same, scenic design and design concept. It was like, and we were like, because we were jet lagged and like it was like the theater was everywhere.
Also, you didn't understand a word any of them were saying.
No,
Didn't
it was great because we got a synopsis before
Right,
each one because we
right.
had this great teacher. Her name is Tracy Foster. She was spectacular, and you give your children
It's
to
all
her.
about the teachers.
It really, really, really is. And then we saw that production of Equus with Daniel Radcliffe and Richard Griffiths, and we saw not Sleep No More. We saw a production of Faust by the company that did Sleep No More, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. Too bad they'll never bring anything like this to New York. And then they
Right.
did, and it's a big success. Good for them. And we saw Coram Boy before it came to Broadway, and we saw we closed it out with The Tempest on the West End with Patrick Stewart as Prospero. And it was like the most for me at like 18 years old.
Unbelievable.
And I had like gotten into NYU and I was going to study voice. And I was like, like who knows? Like I want to study this, but who knows what I want to do? And like after that trip, I was like, I want to be a fucking actor.
Right.
This is the most amazing thing in the world I've ever seen. I was
Yeah.
like so juiced. Yeah, it is all about the teachers. And yeah, so like we went on that trip and I would go see, shows on the weekends when I was here. It was really nice to be like in and around this city.
Were you obsessive or passionate?
I would say I was passionate. I wouldn't say I was obsessive. I've always sort of been really turned off by, and this is the bully in me, like always existing. But I've always been really turned off by like people in my life who are like, theater is everything and all of the above. And I'm like, like I'm pursuing this professionally, and like there's a lot of other things in my life.
Right.
And like if you can't find some other things in your life, you should look harder for them. It's the most wonderful thing, like the pursuit of this craft, but also like, Broadway and the community is all great, but like there's so much other stuff out there.
Right.
I'm like a big sci-fi nerd. I'm like I don't know, like I have
Were
this
you a
whole
video game kid?
yeah, big time.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had like a bad World of Warcraft addiction my junior and senior year of high school. That was
Like
really
with an
fun.
intervention that had to happen,
Um,
or you were able to still do okay
It was
in
a
school
self-induced intervention. It was sort of like one day you can type played into the game and it'll tell you like how much you've played. And after 2 years of like being a subscriber on the game, I had played 88 days. And I was like,
That's a lot
wait
of
a
days.
second, there's only been like
88 days. It's like
500 or
nothing.
600 days, and 80 of them were spent logged into this game. That's messed up, man. So I had to once I factored in how much I'd been sleeping, and how much time I spent eating, and how much time is like truly unavailable to me to play World of Warcraft, like at school, I was like, oh my God, this is a huge problem.
But how healthy that you were able to, I guess you,
I could stop anytime.
yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
It's not a problem at all. So you go to NYU where you begin to learn craft.
Yeah, big time. It was so I feel like I had like a great foundation of like the really fundamental things about like what is acting,
By
what
doing,
is theater,
by being in plays.
yeah, and we had like
seeing
great, we had great
plays.
classes, and yeah, I'd seen great plays and done plays. I had a lot of like on the job training, as it were. And then when I went to NYU, they were very technique focused and very focused on like, you don't do any shows your freshman year, and I was at the Steinhardt School, so I got a music degree actually. And I went into my first voice lesson, which I had like an hour a week for 4 years. And he was like, "Oh, have you ever taken voice lessons?" I was like, "Oh, no, not really. Like I've been in some shows and, but I've never like had a voice lesson. I've like learned songs and sang songs. And I've been in choirs. And that I think was like really valuable to me. As I started to learn a new technique, I did not have to forget what I had been doing proper because I didn't really have anything. I just
Right.
sort of
They
like,
weren't undoing bad
yeah,
habits. You had no,
exactly.
right.
I had bad habits, but they weren't solidified in like, oh, that's what I do. It was just like, oh, this is really hard to do, and it was like, oh, great, let's spend the next 3 years like making that easier.
So when you were at school, did you feel competitive with others? Were you like, oh, I love this is my new family? What was the vibe in that department?
It was very much like a continuation of the high school vibe a little bit. There were 21 kids in the class, and after like a year and a half, you knew like everything about everybody and like we sort of would get to that point where it's like I knew the four gestures that you would do when you sing. Um and like,
You
oh,
don't know
it's
my
like
4 gestures.
I would
I have
after a year and a
5.
half in
Yeah,
class.
yeah.
I have for me it's corn cobs. You won't be able to see it through the microphone, but it's do you want these corn cobs? Because I could give you these corn cobs. I'll take these corn cobs away if you don't want them, but I think you want these corn cobs.
But those are the hand gestures
It
with
was
which you
this.
express your songs.
Yeah, there was one girl in our class who had blades. Her just like her hands they would just be convex.
So when she would sing,
Exactly. Her
Right.
hands they would go down
does
or they would
Jared
go forward.
and Dear Evan Hansen have, I'm trying to think, because I have seen it more than once. Do you have
I'm
a
very
specific hand
I'm very
gesture?
illustrative.
Mm.
Jared loves to count. So does Will. Will loves like if you give Will a line with a list in it, Will instinctively at the table read count those things on his hands. It's
That's
one
your
of his
thing.
favorite acting gestures.
Great.
That's a new one since I got rid of the corn cobs. The other thing that Jared loves to do is
Yes.
illustrate. So, I will say, that's why I gotta move these buttons, gesture to buttons, before the bottom drops out, gesture to the bottom of the Connor Murphy memorabilia market. I also love to place Sabrina Patel in her wristbands, Matt Holzer in his t-shirts. They're all like, everything needs a
Right.
place. And that actually developed because I studied sign language. I studied American Sign Language in college, and it was a thing that I started developing. It started bleeding over into my acting classes because in sign language, when you're talking about multiple topics, you place them in space. So you say like, oh, this is Ilana and she's blonde and blah, 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 and all these things. And you'd be like, and this is Will and he has glasses and blah, blah, blah. And so it'll be like, and Will and Ilana would like meet. And so you will actually
So you have Will on the right and Ilana on the left.
Exactly,
And then
and
when we meet, you move it all to
you
the
move them
center.
together and then you
right.
gesture to them
Right.
as a group. And like all that stuff is like that sort of bled into my acting. In a way that I didn't really realize until I was like doing it. And I was like, oh, this is not a bad habit. Someone will tell me to stop doing it someday and I'll stop doing it that day.
Right. If it's not right.
Right.
If it's not right for the guy.
Go back to doing it the next day.
So when you get out of school, do you already have an agent? Are you looking at backstage? Like, how does one begin when you get out of NYU? It's the Steinhardt?
The Steinhardt School, yes, which is the School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. So
Yeah,
it's like
it
the School
is.
of Miscellaneous Studies at
Nice.
NYU.
We'll take your check. Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
What was her name? Where's Barry Osborne when we need her?
Oh, I know, seriously.
Barry.
What was funny was that Jim Dolan, who is the owner of the Rangers in Madison Square Garden, he built the theater at my high school. It was called the Helen A. Dolan Center. That's his grandmother's name. And then because I went to school with all the Dolan kids, and then I went to college with all the Dolan kids, and he was like, "There's no good recording studio here." So while I was there, they like gut renovated the 6th floor at Steinhardt, and they built the James L. Dolan Recording Studio, which is the most technologically advanced recording studio in New York, and like
That's crazy.
no one's allowed into it.
Right.
At
but
least
you
not the
guys
students.
were. Or
Oh,
who got to
I've
use
never
it?
been inside.
Wait, but so who uses it?
I don't know.
Let's go.
Let's go.
We're in.
We're
We're
going
breaking
right
in.
now.
So when you get out, do you have an agent?
No, I don't have. What I have is I have a few teachers and writers who really believe in me, and also have some professional
Connections.
stuff that they're doing. So so I graduate. I have a showcase. I take a few meetings. One of which is with the people who are now my manager, but they did not sign me that day. They were like, oh, keep us posted about what you do. The first thing I did was go back to the summer camp. It was my, like, let's see, I started teaching there in 2004, so it was 2011. It's my 7th summer teaching there. And that summer, one of the teachers there has written a play. and we actually have like crowdfunded, we're going to take the play to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So my first thing that I did out of college was go teach at 6 weeks of a summer camp, then immediately pack up with some of my students and some of my colleagues and some of my mentors. We fly to Scotland, and I am a chaperone slash actor, and I'm compensated in the form of like some souvenirs and some dinners, and I'm a chaperone slash actor, and I'm also helping set up and break down because it's a
And
Fringe
are you so
Festival.
happy?
Oh my God, it's the time
You're
of my
so
life.
happy.
I'm exhausted all the time, but
Yeah.
I'm just like having a blast. And I come back, and the first thing that I get is I get a call from Paul Davis, who's a lovely casting director, and he says, "Hey, so John Simpkins, who was one of my teachers in college, really like the main guy. He's directing a play at 59E59, and it's a 5-person play, and pays $300 a week, and we'd like to have you come in and audition for it." And that was my first job, and it was like it was the fall after I had graduated, and I was working now at my high school. I was there.
So you're living at home again?
No, I'm living in my Park Slope apartment where I still live, where I moved in my junior year, and
Okay.
I'm commuting. So I'm getting up at 6 a.m. I'm getting on the 7:10 train at Atlantic Terminal and taking the Long Island
So
Railroad out to
sexy.
Locust Valley.
That's so sexy, Will.
When I can wrangle a ride, I'm getting a ride from the train station to Friends Academy, and I'm arriving at 10 minutes to 9. And when I can't wrangle a ride, I'm walking, and I arrive at like 5 minutes after 9. I work there as their assistant technical director and resident lighting designer.
So you light.
I do. Oh yes, I do all kinds of stuff
This
that
is incredible.
it's
But
very
when you were
fun.
saying
Yeah.
earlier about I love theater, but I have all these other interests. You even
Yeah.
have other things you can do within the theater.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've worked as an electrician, and that's actually been a great source of like day job support for me. So I'm the resident lighting designer there. I'm designing their production of As You Like It in the fall, which is set in like the Dust Bowl Midwest.
So you're doing
Um,
some creative lighting.
Yeah, I work there until 4, and then I get on the 4:30 train, and I commute back into Manhattan, and I get off at Penn Station, and I go up to East 59th Street, and I have a 6:30 call for a 7 o'clock show.
And you're in an off-Broadway show.
And I'm in an off-Broadway play.
Now, are you equity
I
at
am
this
not at
point?
this point. Oh, hell
Okay.
no. This is like,
Were
this
you
is
equity
ratchet.
before Dear Evan Hansen?
I was, but I had just gotten my equity card. I had turned it down
Phew.
twice. Yeah, I had turned it down twice before Dear Evan. Well, they would have given it to me.
I hope so.
I would hope so. Yeah, right. I just joined SAG last week.
That's so exciting.
It is very exciting. It's very expensive.
It's crazy. Okay, so you get this play.
Yeah, get the play.
And what a tribute and testament to your, sometimes you go through school and the teacher said you're really good. Your teacher actually cast you
Yeah.
within a year after graduating.
Yeah.
So that must have been
He did it again, too, a year later. He's really been a great beat. John Simpkins.
We love you.
We love you, John Simpkins. He's now the head of the program at Penn State. If you're looking at musical theater programs, go study with John Simpkins. He taught me nearly everything. Between Tracy Foster at Friends Academy and John Simpkins, nearly everything I know.
Unbelievable. With a
yeah.
little Michael Greif. thrown in
Exactly.
for
With a
good
little
measure.
Who? Never heard of him.
That hack.
Oh my God.
I'm so worried about Michael Greif.
Is he going to be all right?
Is he gonna be
his
all
career
right?
going to
I just
going
feel
to
like-
survive?
I mean, I really, you know what? Let's hope.
He's promising.
He's
He's a promising burgeoning. He's an emerging director.
an emerging genius director. All right. It's so funny. I knew Michael Greif. My moment, like yours,
Mhm.
after school is I got cast in the Unicorn Theater Company, which was the non-equity company of the Berkshire Theater Festival.
Oh yes.
And that summer, there was a director named Michael Greif who was also just starting out, and he directed a production of Cloud Nine that I
Yeah.
was cast in. And I was like, in love immediately. We had the best time. And I was
He's
like,
wonderful.
he's my friend for my whole life. And then we came back to the city, and an old friend of it, asked him to come direct something called Mackinac, a
Oh,
play
yeah.
at my theater company called Naked Angels.
Yes.
And that
Wait,
was
do you know Rich Lee?
Yeah, I
Rich
do.
Rich Lee and his wife, whose name I forget,
Christy.
Christy. Rich used to work at our auction house.
That's right.
Rich was the photographer at Roland
Yes.
Auctions. Now he works at the Met.
That is so funny. I love them. I love
The most
them.
wonderful people.
Will you
And
say hi?
Clementine,
Will
I
you say hi to
will.
them and their beautiful daughter, who's probably in her
She's
20s
tall.
at this
She's
point. Who
tall.
knows how old
I
she
think she's
is.
in high school, but she's tall.
And they had a beautiful dog, and they're great people.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So anyway,
Amazing.
so I really did know Michael Greif. All kidding
Yeah.
aside, when we're like promising,
When he was
I was like, this
burgeoning
guy
director.
seems really special.
Yeah.
And then Rent happened, and a lot of people agreed with me. But that was a very exciting thing to kind of watch.
That's amazing. That's
To
unbelievable. I
watch
love
the
that so
rise
much.
of those sorts of talents and be there before everyone else kind of knew who they were. It's very exciting. And I feel that way having seen you and Ben Platt in what was the
In the
name?
black suits.
In the black suits.
So that is
Yes.
the other job that John Simpkins gave me.
John.
John's got an eye for talent. I
Yeah.
would like to point out that we did 2 productions of the black suits in a workshop that I was involved with.
Yeah.
The first one, Ben Platt played the lead, Chris Thurzer. In the workshop, Ben was unavailable, and Taylor Trench played Chris Thurzer. And then in the third production, a fellow named Kobe Getzig, who would also be a really good Evan Hansen, played Chris Thurzer, the lead. So I finished the play, and then I was like, I did Wonderful Town at the Gallery Players, and that was like terrible. But it was fun. But it wasn't fun, actually. I look back
Right.
on it and it's fun, but it was no fun at the time. And then John was like, yeah, so I actually saw the black suits at the Public. They did like a staged reading of it in 2008. And so it was my summer after my freshman year of college, and I had met Joe Iconis that year, and we had become friends, and he's such a great writer and a dear friend
Joe
to me
Iconis
now.
and the Family?
Yeah.
Is that the name? Okay.
And so Joe and John are like some of my dearest friends in the whole world. And so I went to see his great musical that they were doing at the Public, and in a little No Frills production that summer. And I loved it. I was like, this is the best show. I love this show. It's about a Long Island garage band, and I connect with it, and it's like there's fun little things, like places I know in there. I just think this is such a beautiful story. It's got like a Stand By Me kind of like coming of age tale in it.
And great music.
Great music.
songs.
Yeah. Like that song Blue Hair that everybody loves is in that show. And so I just loved it. And then John was like, so we're doing a reading of it in like April, wondering if you'd be available to come do the reading. I was like, sign me up. So I went and I did the reading of it. And then he was like, so, this is after the reading. He was like, we're going to have auditions for this. We're doing it at Barrington Stage Company this summer. And, I really want you to come in for it. But here's the thing. He said they don't want any of like Joe's people and my people to be in the show. So when you come to the audition, please, be familiar, don't act like you don't know us, but don't be too familiar with us. And
Don't point your corn cobs at us.
don't point your corn cobs at me, young man. You sing to Bill Finn, all right?
Bill Finn, by the way.
Love Bill Finn.
Yes.
Oh God, Bill. Bill was crazy in those callbacks. Bill's still crazy. I'd tell him it to his face.
Okay.
So I auditioned for it, and I got it. And that was how I met Ben Platt. And John was like, yeah, we found this kid. He's 18. He's going to Columbia in the fall. He's like crazy talented. And then we got this other guy. His name's Harrison, and he was in Carolina Change on Broadway and blah. And so we get up there, and it's this summer, and it's me and Ben Platt and our friend Harrison Chad, who it turns out they were both in Carolina Change at different points in the same production, and this talented young lady named Sarah Citrullo, and this guy named Jason Haidt, and Annie Golden. It was the incredible dream team up at Barrington that summer, and it was like the show was beautiful. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit, the show, because I in my own mind had built these designs of oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be my Broadway debut.
Right. The
show is
come
so
in.
good,
Mhm.
and everyone's going to love it. We did that production at Barrington, then we did that workshop, and then we brought it to Center Theater Group out in LA. We did it out there. We were so excited. And then there was these issues with the producer who sort of said she had some money. It turns out she didn't have the money, and a donor at the theater sort of covered the gap. But so now we're out in LA, and no one's paying to have John and Joe out there with us, and there's no producer, and the reviews come out and they're bad, and the guy at the LA Times just hated it for no reason at all. He got all kinds of things wrong in his review. It was clear that he wasn't even paying attention. And then that was it.
Right.
And then I came back. It was Thanksgiving, and I had a hernia. I had done the whole production with a hernia. I wore this weird belt to keep my hernia in. So I came home.
I'm really sorry.
heartbroken with my hernia. And I had hernia surgery.
Right. Like you do.
That was healed. It was my second hernia. It was on both sides.
Okay. Sorry.
Gotcha. I knew that would get you. It's so sad.
Yes, go on. Because I know there's a happy ending. Otherwise, I'd be on the
There
floor
is.
sobbing.
So so I'm home now. It's Christmas, and I do the Christmas show with Joe. Joe Iconis does this great Christmas show every year. Come to it. It's 54 Below. It's the most fun in the world. It was the first year that we were at 54 Below, or the second year actually, but it was the first year that Jen Tepper worked there. She got the job while we were out doing the Black Suits in LA. It was amazing.
Exciting.
It was a magical time. So we did Christmas, and then it was January, and it was cold. It was February, and it was cold. And then I met a nice lady at a bar who's now my girlfriend 3.5 years later.
Mazel.
Yeah.
Mazel
We met at
tov.
Characters across
That's
the street
very
from 54
sweet.
Below.
So at some point, you get a call to audition for a reading.
Yes, this
as
is 6
the-
months later.
As the story goes.
Exactly. I'm
for
the
something-
dejected young man who gets
Yes.
invited to audition for the untitled Pasek Paul Levinson musical that Michael Greif is directing. And I actually had booked a nymph show in the meanwhile, so I was very excited. I'm developing a new musical.
And
I
it's
feel good
always
again.
great to go in when you already have a job.
Yeah, you always feel better. Everyone's
Desperation
nicer
is
to
less
you.
Intense.
Yeah, and,
right?
the casting directors, oh, it's so good to see you. Oh my God, thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
in.
coming in,
Thanks for coming in.
Will.
Thanks for making time for us. Is what the dialogue becomes when you're in a show.
Amazing.
It's like, I'm in a show. I'm free all day.
That's
like
right.
I have nothing to do.
So walk us through your first audition for Dear Evan Hansen.
Okay, so I'm in the hallway, and I run into my friend Elise, who is a spectacularly talented actor. Her name is Elise Allen Lewis, and she was in Mamma Mia, and she was in Disaster and Amelie, and we actually just did a reading together this morning at NAMT. So we're in that nymph show together, and I run into her in the lobby at Pearl. I was like, "Oh, were you auditioning for this Basketball Levinson show?" She goes, "Yeah, it went terrible." I was like, "Oh, great, okay." And
See
then
you
I
tonight.
see you tonight.
Yeah.
And then I get up to the hallway and I look around and I'm like, oh, this is kind of a who's who of young musical theater actors who whether or not I have a personal relationship with everybody in this hallway, I know everyone in this hallway. And I was like, how the fuck did I get in here? First of all. And then I ran into this actor whose name I'm not going to say because I'm classy, but I'll say it to you later.
Okay.
But this actor who I don't really like. And in that that 6 months since I had gotten back from the Black Suits, I'd seen him at a bunch of auditions. And he had sort of psyched me out, in the hallway. I don't know if he did it on purpose. It kind of felt like he was doing it on purpose, but our perceptions are inherently skewed in those moments when the power relationship is uneven. And he'd booked some of the jobs that I had been in for, and I was like, oh fuck, here's this guy. So he went right before me. And I was listening to his audition while going over my sides, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna book it. I do all this stuff with Joe Iconis, and these Paskin Paul aren't gonna want me, and I don't belong here. So I went in and I did my audition, and I sang a great cut of "Man Up" from the Book of Mormon that I have from the 6 times that I've auditioned for that role. Then also not gotten it. But I keep the cut because it's a really nice 32-bar cut that shows off voice and character, and that's almost what they're asking for. So I sang that. It went over well. And then I did the sides, and the sides were the first scene, where I come in and make fun of him and accuse him of jerking off, and the last scene where he, it reveals that I have no friends, and I say "fuck you" and I run away. And I walked out of the room and I was like, well, that went pretty well, but I just don't think it's gonna happen. And to this day, I imagine this sort of scenario where all these people are there, and in my head, the person who was that's the guy had to have been Michael Greif. In hindsight, having known about the situation, who I was at the time, what everybody was prioritizing, and I know in my heart, we've never talked about it. Michael was sort of probably looked to his left and looked to his right and sort of nodded and was like, that's it, right? Let's try that. It's a week-long, reading. I'm getting paid $100. It's no stakes. If I suck, you get somebody else. And so I booked it. And it was the kind of scenario where I had tech for the nymph show the same week as the reading. And so I sat down with Tom Caruso, who was directing the nymph show. And I was like, Tom, so I booked this reading and you have to work with me because I will quit. And I was like,
You
I hate
knew.
that I'm
Yeah.
saying this at all. I feel disgusting, like giving you this ultimatum, but like I'll give Nymph their $1,300 back, and like I have to do this reading. I have to. And everybody worked with everybody. It was really great. I didn't have to drop out of any shows. I had a fun time.
And is everyone who was in that reading who's in the cast right now?
So, Rachel Bay Jones and Jennifer Laura Thompson and Ben Platt and Michael Park were all doing their second reading at that
Okay.
point. And Mike Feist and I, it was our first day. And at that point, Barrett Wilbert Weed was playing Zoe, and a girl named Emily Walton was playing Ilana. And there were 4 or 5 other like ensemble, like kids at school.
So it's changed since then.
It has. It's changed a lot. It was like 300 pages, and it was like, this like snarky Facebook musical that was kind of like a little less like reverent and real, and a little more like commenting on like, look what fools we are in our modern age. What it has become is a much more sort of grounded, concrete story about a boy, his family, his friends, and the world at large.
So when you think back to that time,
Yeah.
and you think back to what Dear Evan Hansen has become in 3 years since that reading.
Yeah.
So the development process happened with you guys, right?
Yes.
And it was developed on you and from you.
100%.
Are there things in that show that came out of you directly?
Yes, absolutely.
All of it.
All of it is. I wrote it. No, but I'm one of those actors who, just because of the way I was trained, and I'm the kind of person who, I don't really like to ad lib. I don't really like to suggest lines. I don't want to change stuff. Like, I want to. You give me lines and I say them as best I can, and you, the writer, get excited about things I do well and get excited about adjusting things that I don't do well or cutting them. And I think that for me and Stephen, that was a really wonderful working relationship.
Stephen Levinson.
Stephen Levinson, our book writer. Yeah. Because
well, the irony is that you have sort of this less singing or less of your own songs.
Yeah.
And this is such a big acting show
I
for
have
you.
6 bars of solo singing in the whole play.
I mean, obviously you're singing the whole time.
I'm singing a lot, but yeah. So I had a song at the time. I had this crazy song called "Going Viral" that was like a big punk rock, like patter song, dance number.
Do you remember any of it or how it began, or is it?
I
too
do.
far
I don't want
away?
to sing any of it. It's really it's like it hurts me.
That it's
Plus, I think I
gone.
get in trouble. Yeah.
But that it's no longer.
Yeah, no, but it's like, it's good that it's gone. Like, that was the tough thing. Like, Michael called me the day before we were starting rehearsals for DC to tell me that it was gone. So I wasn't like, I just burped into the mic. That's totally gross.
That's okay.
But yeah, he called me to tell me.
Big stars
Yes.
always do that.
We burp right
Yes.
into the mic. And I was like, oh, I get it. And he's like, I think you'll find that it gets us to the action of the play much more quickly.
Yeah.
And we will be very happy with the adjustment it makes to the tone. And he was totally right. And I knew he was right. Actually, the nightmare was like, he called and he was like, Will, I'm calling with some bad news. And I was like, I'm cut from the play. I'm cut from the play. I'm now going to be played. It's now going to be like a girl. They needed another girl in the play, or they cut the character entirely. They combined it with Ilana, and they figured that was the right move. And I was like, I went everywhere. Yeah. And he was like, we've had to cut Going Viral. And I was like, oh, phew.
But I'm still in it.
Yeah, I'm in the play, though. He goes,
Right.
yes, and I think you'll find that there have been some adjustments to the book, and you'll be quite happy with the amount of material that remains.
Okay.
And
well, we'll see, won't we, Michael?
Yeah, we'll see how it
Yes.
goes at the read-through tomorrow,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Whole Foods in Gowanus, and I got drunk because I was bummed out.
Yeah, your
with
song
my
was
roommate.
gone.
My song was gone, and I was like, oh, like, even though I believed Michael, I was like, it's still a great character. And actually, since then, a lot of content has been added for Jared. Like,
Sure.
so much stuff
He
in the
was telling
second
the
act.
truth.
He was telling the truth. He really meant it. He's a very smart director who knows what he's doing. But at the time, I was like, there's a weird perception, though, in our industry. It's like having a song somehow inflates the size of the role a little
Yeah.
bit. And so I was just like a little conscious of that. Like, oh, like now it's going to be viewed even though it won't functionally be that way or feel that way during the show, when people talk about the show, it'll make, it'll make it like it's in a weird ranking
But that
way.
has not happened.
No, it hasn't,
That
which
has
is really
not happened,
lovely.
because when
Yeah.
you see Dear Evan Hansen, if you can see Dear Evan Hansen, there is nothing about what you're doing that is less than or sidebar. It's
Right.
so completely front and center to the story and driving the story forward, and you have developed such a brilliantly complex, full human in the play. It's thrilling, and you're in a play. You get to be in a play
Yeah,
that is a
exactly.
musical.
I get to be in a play and sing backups, which is great, actually.
It's a
It's
great CD.
Yeah, it's a wonderful.
It's a
Yeah, I love the
wonderful
album, and I
CD.
love and I love the like, the whole a lot of content. I got to do a lot more when that song went away, which was really fun for me.
Right.
I got to sort of all the stuff in the second act where you sort of go on this journey with Jared a little bit about like you sort of watch his and Evan's friendship deteriorate. Like that didn't exist in DC, and it certainly didn't exist before that when I had the number and everything. So it's like it goes back to like these things have a way of working themselves out in the right way.
Because you and Ben had a prior relationship in that other play that you were friends in.
Yeah.
You weren't rivals, as I recall.
No, he
in the
played
Black
an
Suits.
anxiety-riddled high school senior.
Right.
And I played his snarky, perverted friend. So not a lot has changed between us.
But it must have been kind of amazing to go in
Oh, it was
knowing each other
wonderful.
already.
Yeah, he was the only person I knew on the first day. I walked into that room. I knew nothing about it. It was so cloak and dagger. It was so secret. And then I walked in, and I was like, Ben Platt is here. Oh, thank God. Like, and then I got to know everyone else, obviously, but he was the guy I knew on that first day of school, as it were.
So talk me through a little bit, because it's really become, it's really huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And you're at the center of it. And I imagine your life has changed in certain ways. So how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
It's really nice.
It's a long run now.
It's been a long run. That's a weird thing to adjust to. You kind of are reminded of how important your technique is, because
Have
as
you
an
had
actor,
vocal trouble, or have you been able to?
I've been okay. I had a little trouble around Tony season, as I think everyone did, just because we were doing so much extra
Sure,
stuff
just
and
so much press and rehearsal for the Tonys as well, and all that stuff. Right.
But no, for me, it's actually more about the acting technique. It's about like this idea that you have to sort of like put yourself in a neutral place and remind yourself of your intentions and just say the words as simply as possible, because any tricks that you may have been using to get through before that are not going to work on show 500 and whatever we're on. It's like I'm constantly reminded of how much I need to just like say the lines. And then it works, and people say like, how do you keep it fresh? And like, I think there's a bit of a misnomer in that, because if you come see my show in previews, I'm not any more or less emotionally invested in it than I am when you see the 300th show. The difference is at previews, I'm trying to figure out where to stand. So there's always, or like maybe you'll see it right after previews. And now I'm very concerned because there might be press in the audience or Tony voters or, whatever. And so there's always something in your brain that is not the play. And the trick is, if you are doing technically sound work, you will still do the play well, despite those distractions.
Sure.
And so when those distractions are gone and all you have is the play, that's the moment where you're like, oh, I really need to like sink into these words and these actions and these things, these relationships, because otherwise it's like I'm gonna wander away with my mind.
Right.
And it's
my recollection when I've done a few very long runs, and it would happen mostly on a 2-show day. And by the way, when we did Your Good Man Charlie Brown, we had 3-show days at one point, which was this insane, like,
that's crazy.
If we gave you Monday and Tuesday off, could you do 17 shows on Saturday? We're like, that's a lot of shows. BD?
Oh my God.
BD, is that okay? I think BD Wong was our equity deputy.
Is that in the rules? He goes,
feels like
I
a
think
lot of
so.
shows. Like, are we at Macy's?
Maybe, who knows, yeah.
But I remember I would say a line and be like, did I already say that?
Yeah.
Oh no, that was the matinee. Like, you would get like, oh shit.
I get a cold sweat in my lower back. I get it midway through a line when I'm like, I don't know if I said the beginning of this line right.
It's totally
And
like,
it's like all the hairs on my arm stand on end. I get a cold sweat in my low back, and I'm like, well, there's nothing to do now. Whatever came
no
out,
one's
came
looking at
out.
me funny.
You
No
don't
one's
even
acting.
know. And that's the other thing. I don't get to look at anyone.
Right. It's
I'm playing out. I'm direct address the whole play for the
Yes.
most part.
But at this point, the audience knows your play so well, they probably could help you
Oh
out.
my God,
There are
literally.
repeat
I
offenders,
could just
as it
call for a
were.
line, and it'll come to me from the mezzanine or the
One-
front row.
right. Z102 is like, no,
Yeah.
you didn't say it yet. That's the wrong slide. The slide is not
Oh my
matching.
God.
So you are playing someone who there are many characters who are perceived as angels in this play, right? Like Zoe and the mom,
Yeah, right.
and then Jared is sort of perceived as the bully
A little
in the
bit.
show, and there's so much contact with your audience outside of the play itself.
Yeah.
So how has that been for you to become super famous, super fast, at the center of this incredibly vulnerable, beautiful piece that's a lot social commentary, and then just really a play about a family,
Yeah.
as you said?
You know, I think that the whole the publicity and the fan aspect of the show has been very overwhelming for me. It's very like the way I walk through Midtown is very different, and I'm very like head down. I don't really like to, especially after the show, I don't really want to take pictures. I don't want to sign things. And it's just because the show is so fatiguing. I mean, even though I'm in like one of the more comedic, I'm in the comedic role, and I don't have to like bawl my eyes out, but it is so exhausting, and it feels so like it's so unaffected. Like there's no like character. It's like me making like minor tweaks to like what I instinctively do to make myself a little more coarse and a little
But
less
it feels
emotionally
like
intelligent.
you.
But yeah, but it feels very much like me. So in that regard, it feels very vulnerable. And then it's very difficult for me when people can't separate the character I play in the play from the person who I am, but between those two things, like the actor brand that I put out in the world. So it's like
What does that mean, the actor brand?
well, I think like, like in the age of social media, especially our show has asked us to be very active, and to tweet or to be on Instagram or to be on whatever.
To be
And
available to your audience.
yeah, well, to aid in sort of raising the profile of the show, and it's they want us to be accessible and to be humans and to be ourselves. But the problem for me is that I think I vary from some of my colleagues in this way. Like I have no interest in putting like myself out for the world because there's no real way to do that. So what I put out there is like what I want to put out to the world, which I think is what we all put on social media, and we misconstrue it as who everybody is. But I'm like, if we're like out late at night, I don't want to like put like us at the bar on my Snap story. Like we're off duty, that's like this is my time. But I love to use social media to like promote things I like and like announce things that I'm doing, and sort of like. Lately, I've been tweeting a lot about bowling, which I think is really I think people are very confused by that. And I sort of like the chaos that